Greetings Keyforgers and welcome back. Today we're going to go over a deck that I played at an Archon event at D20 in Watford. This was on the 18th of January 2023. It's an Age of Ascension deck. We have Sanctum, Brobnar and Mars, Naser or Naser, Seagill's Pirate. Very cool looking blue Archon there, casting some spells. Bottom card coming out. Turning over, and we're going to be starting with Brobnar. 1-2 punch is an action. You get an amp when you play it. To play, stun an enemy creature. If that creature was already stunned, destroy it instead. A second 1-2 punch. They combo quite well together. Bramo, 4 power, 1 armor. Play, deal 2 damage to each enemy flanked creature. Cower's End is an action. Play, destroy each undamaged creature. Gain 3 chains. Foozle or Fuzzle, 5 power, Reap. If an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1 amber. Gengar Chieftain, 5 power, play. You may ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. Groggins, 8 power. When Groggins is used to fight, it can only attack flank creatures. A second Groggins. Gargantes Scrapper, 3 power, alpha, play. If you have 3 amber or more, deal 3 damage to an enemy creature. Grunt Buggy is an artifact. You get an amber when you play it. Your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each friendly creature with power 5 or higher. Your keys cost +1 amber for each enemy creature with power 5 or higher. Ogopogo, 6 power. After Ogopogo attacks and destroys a creature, you may deal 2 damage to a creature. Pile of Skulls is an artifact. Each time an enemy creature is destroyed during your turn, a friendly creature captures 1 amber. And now we move on to Mars. Agent Human, 2 power with elusive. Reap, choose a friendly non-Mars creature and an enemy non-Mars creature. Stun the chosen creatures. Collector Worm, 2 power, 5 armor. Fight, archive the creature Collector Worm fights. If that creature leaves your archives, put it into its owner's hand instead. A second Collector Worm. I'm just going to call this one the Proliferator because I have no idea how to pronounce that first part. 3 power. If it is on a flank, archive a Mars card from your discard pile. Fixed Fingers, 2 power, 2 armor with elusive. Each other Martian creature gets +2 armor. Mars Needs Amber. It's an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. Each damaged enemy non-Mars creature captures 1 from their own side. Mind Warper, 2 power elusive. Action. Choose an enemy creature. It captures 1 amber from its own side. Beam Buckler, 4 power, 1 armor. Play. Deal 2 damage to a creature and move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. Combat Pheromones is an artifact. You get an amber when you play it. Omni ability. Sacrifice Combat Pheromones. You may use up to 2 other Mars cards this turn. Hypno Beam is an action. Play. Gain control of an enemy creature. Red Planet Ray Gun is an upgrade. You get an amber when you play it. This creature gains Reap. Choose a creature. Deal 1 damage to that creature for each Mars creature in play. Ether Spider, 7 power. Ether Spider deals no damage when fighting. Each amber that would be added to your opponent's pool is captured by Ether Spider instead. Now this is a legacy right there, so it didn't appear in Age of Ascension. And finally on to Sanctum. Lion Beltram, 4 power, 1 armor with deploy. Its neighbours get +2 power. Bordan the Redeemed, 3 power with elusive. Action, capture 2 amber. A second Bordan. Protect the Weak is an upgrade. You get an amber when you play it. This creature gets +1 armor and gains Taunt. Sir Marrows, 4 power, 2 armor. After your opponent gains amber by reaping, Sir Marrows captures it. Take Hostages is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. For the remainder of the turn, each time a friendly creature fights, it captures 1 amber. The Grey Rider, 2 power with deploy. Play, fight, reap. You may ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. Doorstep to Heaven is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. Each player with 6 amber or more is reduced to 5 amber. A second Doorstep to Heaven. Gorm of Om is an artifact. Omni ability, sacrifice Gorm of Om, destroy an artifact. A second Gorm of Om. Vault Keeper, 4 power, 1 armor, your amber cannot be stolen. And there we have it. Let's get into that breakdown. There were 21 creatures in this deck, 8 actions, 5 artifacts and 2 upgrades, 10 printed amber across all the cards. Now one thing you may have noticed, or you will notice as we go through this deck, is I picked it primarily because of the passive effects on the creatures and how they disrupt the opponent. It does mean that they're always in play, they don't have to be actioned, they don't have to be reaped. I'll point them out as we go through. If we start with Expected Amber, we had the Grump Buggy. Brobnar artifact, where your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each friendly creature with power 5 or higher. Now we've got 21 creatures in this deck, and we have quite a few with power 5 or higher. But the flip side is it also works on us for our opponent's creatures with power 5 or higher. So it does rely on maintaining a board with those creatures. The fact that we have high powered creatures and we're going to have them on the board means that having Pile of Skulls in play, each time an enemy creature is destroyed during your turn, a friendly creature captures 1, means we have that constant Aember Control on our turn. It is through capture, but like I said, we have high powered creatures and quite a few ways to pump them up, make them a little bit more survivable. So the majority of our control was to stop our opponent forging for 6, 7. They're going to be forging for 10, 11, 12. Plus we have cards in this deck which will strip them down to under normal cost. So we have those Doorsteps to Heaven, which we have here. 2 of them in the deck. Each player with 6 amber or more is reduced to 5. If we're constantly pushing our opponent's key cost up, playing this basically restarts their clock. Another passive effect we had was Sir Marrow, 4 power, 2 armor. After your opponent gains amber by reaping, Sir Marrow's captures it. So even if they want to reap out, they're going to have to fight into Sir Marrow's first just to get that amber. We had Take Hostages for the remainder of the turn. Each time a friendly creature fights, it captures 1 amber. It is on a Sanctum turn, but like I said, we do have some high power creatures in Sanctum as well. We also have more capture. Bordan the Redeemed, 3 power elusive. Now this isn't a passive effect, these are actions. Capture 2 amber. In Mars, we had Mars Needs Amber. Each damaged enemy non-Mars creature captures 1 from their own side. Now this doesn't trigger as often because I like to actually keep my opponent's board as clear as possible. I will not work around just this 1 card. We have plenty of other ways to keep our opponent off check. The Mind Warper, again, 2 power elusive with an action. Choose an enemy creature, it captures 1 from its own side. And then we had our legacy card, the Ether Spider. A passive effect. It deals no damage when fighting. That's when it fights or it gets fought into. Each amber that would be added to your opponent's pool is captured by Ether Spider instead. Now if you've got that and Sir Marrow's out on the board, you choose where that goes, but Ether Spider means any amber whatsoever. So if they attack one of your creatures and they think I'll get the amber off that creature when it dies, no, it goes straight back onto Ether Spider. And a lot of people overlook it. It's a fantastic card. I'm so glad that it's back in Winds of Exchange as well. So with those effects, that artifact's in there, we're looking to stall our opponent out as long as possible. You tend not to get quick games with this deck, unless you lose pretty quick, that is. It's going to go on a while. The amber generation is pretty much that 10 printed amber. If we can reap, fantastic. We don't really have any way of getting amber from our creatures into our pool. But we had a few cards that give us a little bit of a boost. Fuzzle or Foozle, 5 power. Reap if an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1. So that's a reap, gain 2. Just make sure you kill one of your opponent's creatures first. We had the Combat Pheromones in Mars, artifact. Omni ability to sack it any time. And then you can use up to 2 other Mars cards this turn. Very handy for using the Collector Worms, which we'll see later on out of turn. We had a Grey Rider. 2 power deploy. Play, fight, reap. You may ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. That's a cheat. You kind of want to put them next to your Collector Worms. And then we have the Vault Keeper. 4 power, 1 armor. Your amber can't be stolen. Yes, your opponent can capture it. They can lower it, but they can't steal it. So if you are up against shadows and Vault Keeper's on the board and you've got it well protected, not an issue at all. There was artifact control, 2 of the same card, pretty hard artifact control. Gorm of Om, sacrifice it as an Omni ability, so again, you don't have to be on a Sanctum turn. Destroy an artifact. Very, very useful because your opponent has to wait for it to cycle round. It's very rare, there's only a few cards that deal with pulling artifacts out of a discard pile. Creature control. This is where this deck really comes to life, along with that Aember Control as well. We had a board wipe, we had Coward's End. If for any reason you were behind on board and you couldn't maintain a battle line or a survivable battle line and your opponent's creatures are not damaged, this will just clear the board. It's not great, you do get 3 chains, it will slow you down. We don't really have any efficiency in this deck. In fact, this is the negative because it's got 3 chains attached to it. But a lifeline for you if you do need it. Gengar Chieftain, when you play it, you can ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. Again, pointing out those collector worms we're going to see. And then one of my love-hate cards, the Gargantudes Scrapper. 3 power with Alpha, so it has to be the first card you play, which means you've at least got to start your turn on 3 amber or more if you want to utilise the play effect, which is deal 3 damage to an enemy creature. The majority of the time, it doesn't happen, but with Grunt Buggy in play, if your opponent has a couple of high-powered creatures on the board, this could trigger. Ogopogo, passive effect of after it attacks and destroys a creature, you may deal 2 damage to a creature. Now it says you may, and you can do it to your own creatures if you had good destroyed effects. I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Ogopogo in some future sets if it did say after fight. But again, 6-powered creature, in with that Grunt Buggy. 1-2 punch, we had 2 of them. Actions, when you play it, you stun a creature. If that creature was already stunned, you destroy it instead. Having 2 is quite good. I do pull it off every now and again. It feels pretty good. But sometimes you get those creatures that your opponent plays and they enter play stunned. This is a great way of just taking them straight back off the board. And then finally in Brobnar we had Bramo. When you play it, 2 damage to each enemy flank creature, which will soften them up for those Groggins we're going to see later on. Then we had Mars. We had Agent Human. 2 power elusive, and when you reap, you have to choose a friendly non-Mars creature and an enemy non-Mars creature, and you stun those creatures. Works quite well if you are setting up one of those 1-2 punches, but you will have to stun something of yours. If you've got something that's already stunned, just put it on there. You can't get stunned twice. Hypno Beam. One of the cheesiest actions ever. You play it, you gain control of an enemy creature. If your opponent has a creature that's 5 power or higher, take it. All of a sudden, your Grunt Buggy key cost is lowered and theirs is increased. We had the Beam Buckler, 2 power to a creature when you play it, and you move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. The Red Planet Ray Gun, we saw this a couple of videos back in Winds of Exchange. It's an upgrade. Creature gains Reap, choose a creature, deal 1 damage to that creature for each Mars creature in play. So that's yours and your opponent's Mars creatures if you're sharing that house. If they don't have any creatures, you have to hit one of your own creatures. There's no you may on here. That's going to go off if you reap. And then we had the 2 Collector Worms. 2 power, 5 armor. When you fight, archive the creature Collector Worm fights. If that creature leaves your archives, put it into its owner's hand instead. Now, there was an errata on Collector Worm, but these things are still extremely useful because what you can do is archive your opponent's creatures from play. Yes, it might speed up their deck and they draw into their actions, but we never have to call our archives. There is nothing in our deck that deals with archives at all, apart from a little bit of recursion, which is our Proliferator. 3 power, Reap ability. If it's on a flank, you archive a Mars card from your discard pile. Usually, I tend to get back my Collector Worms on my Hypno Beam, but if I've archived 4, 5, 6 of my opponent's creatures with the Collector Worms, I will not call my archives unless I medically need to for whatever reason. There was no efficiency, there was no disruption. There were a few cards that were not included in there, but not many. Upgrade Protect the Weak, +1 armor and gains Taunt. A little bit more survivability, so it provides a little bit of protection for your passive effect creatures like the Ether Spider, like the Surmaros, the Vault Keeper, or even the Collector Worms. Baltrum, 4 power, 1 armor with deploy. Each of its neighbours gets +2 power. Fixed Finger. In Mars, each other Martian creature gets +1 armor. And then in Brobnar, we had the 2 Groggins. 8 power. Fantastic for that grunt buggy there. When they're used to fight, they can only attack flank creatures, but it's 8 power. They're pretty much going to destroy anything they attack. Now, I chose to take this deck to Archon because of those passive abilities. I think Barrister Joya in there would have really topped it off, but I love the Ether Spider, the Sir Marrows, the Vault Keeper, the Collector Worms. The Grunt Buggy is insane, and that is really key. The Grunt Buggy and the Pile of Skulls. With 21 creatures, you have to maintain a board. Now, the first deck I went up against was pretty much a mirror of this deck. I can tell you now, I think we both forged 1 key after about 25 minutes, and I think we forged it for around about 20-24. It was nuts, because they had a Grunt Buggy, I had a Grunt Buggy, we had a battle lines, we couldn't really destroy each other's battle lines, or we were cycling pretty fast. My Collector Worms couldn't pop off, because his creatures were actually like 7, 8, 9 power. It was absolutely mad. At one point, my Gorm of Oms got destroyed, so I couldn't destroy their Grunt Buggy, and then when I did have them on the board, I couldn't destroy the Grunt Buggy because it would mean they would forge because we had such high Amber totals. In the end, I Coward's End because I knew I was going to lose to time. There was no way I was going to catch up, and I thought I'm going to have to pull something pretty good out. I was hoping I could bring those out and be able to forge my keys at normal costs, so I destroyed the Grunt Buggies, and yeah, I lost, but it was such a fun game to play. Very, very thinky game. Hurt my brain. Next 2 games, I won. Pretty easy. Opponents didn't even forge a key. And then the last game, I think when we checked, 10 of my Brobnar cards were at the bottom of my deck. And because the efficiency is not there in this deck, if you don't play cards, you don't draw into cards. And it was a case of I couldn't build my board up. I didn't have that Brobnar backbone. And my opponent just outboarded me. So I did go 2-2. It is a really fun deck to play. It's not one to play if you want a quick game, because you're not getting a quick game out of this, like I said, unless you lose pretty quickly. If you're interested in the SAS score, it was a 73. I think it's probably better than that. I always love seeing Ether Spider. I think if I practiced a bit more with it, I could probably make this quite a competitive deck. But that was my Archon deck for the 18th of January. All that remains for me to say is good luck, have fun, keep forging.